When was the last time you looked straight into the mirror and asked yourself, am I living my life? Not a life that earns admiration. Not the stable job, the ideal relationship, or the lifestyle that makes society nod in quiet approval. But the type of life that brings peace when you're alone with yourself. No armor, no strain, no performance. We grow up under layers of expectation. Your family wants you to be safe. Your teachers want you to excel. Society wants you to be kind, well-mannered, and proper. Every expectation becomes a beautiful mask, but one that suffocates. And layer by layer, you drift further from your true self. You learn to live to fit in, to be accepted, to not disappoint. But the price of always being the good person in others' eyes is the silence of your soul. Because every time you choose someone else over yourself, you're telling yourself, I don't matter. Carl Jung, the thinker who transformed how we understand ourselves, once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Becoming your true self is not a privilege everyone gets, because it demands you walk a path few dare to take. It asks you to let go of expectations, compromise, and pretense. It's not easy. It brings conflict, misunderstanding, and even loneliness. But that's the price you pay to live fully. Without halves, without default settings, choosing yourself is a quiet, powerful act. It's not rebellion. It's an inner declaration. From this moment on, I will no longer live just to be accepted. I will live to truly exist. And that is where the journey begins. Number 1. How society pulls us away from ourselves. We don't lose ourselves in a single clear-cut moment. There's no warning bell, no one pointing at us saying, from here on, you're starting to lose who you are. The process happens quietly, gradually, wrapped in what seems right. Obedience, achievements, praised kindness, celebrated self-sacrifice, and staying silent to keep the peace. Society doesn't need to force us to be the same. It simply rewards those who are similar often enough. And just like that, to belong, we learn to twist ourselves to fit the mold. We're taught that success means status, degrees, wealth, and having what many people dream of. But few ever stop to ask, is that what I truly need? The danger lies in this. The definition of success doesn't just come from outside. It's something we internalize, repeat, and eventually enforce on ourselves. We start chasing goals that don't belong to us. Over time, what we feel, what we want, and what truly moves us no longer get consulted in life's major decisions. Instead, we ask, what will others think? Or, will this look like failure in society's eyes? Carl Jung understood this better than most. He didn't see the ego as the enemy, but he recognized its greatest risk. When the ego is shaped entirely by society, it turns its back on the soul. He said, who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. But the modern world is an outward-looking machine. It keeps us watching others, competing, comparing, and performing. And the more we look outward, the more we forget that there's a sacred space inside us being left behind. When you live to please others, to meet expectations, to avoid disappointing anyone, you're quietly sending a message deep into your unconscious, I don't matter as much as they do. Every time you ignore your inner voice in exchange for external approval, you sever a thread between yourself and your true being. Jung once warned, What am I living for? Jung believed the inner voice is a form of truth that logic can't replace. But he also knew that most of us don't shut it out because we can't hear it. We shut it out because we're afraid of what it might ask us to change. We fear uncertainty. We fear breaking what's familiar. We fear facing parts of ourselves we've never dared to acknowledge. Yet the irony is this: it's that fear that traps us, not our actual circumstances. So the real question to ask isn't, how do I stop feeling tired? It's, did my recent decisions come from truth or fear? And if the answer makes your heart sink a little, that's not failure, that's the beginning. Number 3. Understanding what it truly means to choose yourself. Choosing yourself has never been a selfish act, but in a society that glorifies sacrifice to the extreme, putting yourself first is often seen as betrayal. Betrayal of family, betrayal of duty, betrayal of the good person image others have projected onto you. So, we learn to hide our real needs, true emotions, and honest dreams, just to keep others comfortable. But the truth is, if you live just to be accepted, to play your role well, to not let anyone down in the end, you'll be the one most disappointed. Jung never advocated for selfishness or avoiding responsibility, but he saw the line between selflessness and self-abandonment. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, he once wrote, because only when you dare to face yourself fully can you offer yourself to the world completely, not as a copy, not as a vessel for others' expectations, but as a whole human being with limits, emotions, and truth. Choosing yourself is an act of love, not avoidance. It's recognizing that if you're drained, you have nothing to give but fatigue, frustration, and wounded silence. When you learn to turn inward, to ask what you need, what feels true, what brings you peace, that's not weakness. That's the beginning of real growth. Choosing yourself means stopping the habit of making others happy at your own expense. It means restoring the order. I am the root. From me, all other connections can be truly nourished. And here's the strange thing. When you start living in alignment with who you are, the world begins to respond differently, not because everyone suddenly understands or supports you, but because you stop being pulled toward things that no longer fit. The people who stay are the ones who accept the real you. The opportunities that follow match the new frequency you've stepped into. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that occur when you live in tune with your true self. Choosing yourself is the first step toward making everything else fall into place. Number 4. The turning point. Facing the shadow. None of us is made entirely of light, and none of us is made entirely of darkness. But what causes us pain isn't the darkness within us. It's the fact that we try to deny it, hide it, pretend it doesn't exist. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of ourselves we don't want to see, don't dare admit, and sometimes don't even realize we carry. The shadow isn't as evil or dangerous as we think. It's simply everything we've cut away from the good person identity we've tried so hard to build. Anger, jealousy, fear, shame, desire, the need for control, the feeling of helplessness. We bury it deep in the unconscious, hoping that if we ignore it long enough, it'll disappear. But the truth is, the shadow never goes away. It waits for its moment to erupt in overwhelming emotion, to show up in actions we can't control, or to manifest as a kind of emptiness we can't explain. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In other words, you don't grow by chasing positivity, development, or healing if you're still denying the darker parts of who you are. Real transformation begins when you find the courage to face your shadow, not to defeat it, but to acknowledge it as an inseparable part of you. When you start to accept the shadow, you realize you're not as bad as you fear, but also not as good as you once believed. You're human, contradictory, complex, and real. That moment when you stop fighting yourself is when the energy you've been using to hide, avoid, and suppress finally gets released. That energy can now become creativity, connection, and peace. Facing the shadow is a turning point. Not because it changes who you are, but because it brings you back to your true self, undefended, unfiltered, whole. And only then can you stand firm within yourself, no longer needing approval or fearing judgment. You no longer need to be validated to know you're worthy, because you've seen the darkest part of yourself and you still chose to stay. Number 5. The deep rewards of choosing yourself. There's something strangely profound that only those who dare to choose themselves truly understand. The feeling of not returning to a place, a memory, or a person, but returning to yourself, a quiet yet deeply stirring reunion. It's not loud, not explosive, not a movie scene moment that makes you burst into tears, but it makes you breathe deeper, stand firmer, and for the first time in years, feel in the right place. When you choose yourself, the first thing you gain isn't applause. It's clarity. The previous fog, the confusion, and the sense of being lost begins to lift. Not because you've found the perfect plan, but because you've stopped drifting from your center. You begin to sense what lightens you and without guilt. Once, saying no may have made you feel ashamed, afraid of being judged, or afraid of letting others down. But now you understand. Every time you say yes to what isn't right, you're saying no to yourself, and you no longer want to do that. Jung called this spiritual maturity, the moment you know your limits and dare to honor them. You stop agreeing just to avoid conflict. You stop complying just to maintain an image. You understand that saying no doesn't make you bad. It makes you honest. And that honesty is worth more than any approval you might gain. In the end, all of this adds up to one thing, something everyone longs for, but few truly reach. Real freedom. Not freedom of movement, geography, or choice, but freedom within. You no longer live to meet someone else's standard. You're no longer controlled by the fear of being abandoned, of not being good enough, not having enough, not being nice enough. You can fail without collapsing, be misunderstood without explaining, lose something and still not lose yourself, because you now know who you are, where you come from, and what's true for you. This kind of freedom doesn't bring applause. It doesn't guarantee safety, and it won't always please everyone, but it gives you something nothing else can replace: the feeling of being alive. Not just getting through the days, not playing a role, not surviving just to maintain an image, but living with presence, emotion, and intention. Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And every time you choose yourself, you're reaffirming that truth, that you are no longer bound by the past, by expectations, or by anyone else's definition. You may not be understood by everyone. You might outgrow certain people, step away from old lifestyles, or let go of things that once felt important. But what you gain, though invisible, is deeply real. Clarity, purpose, peace, the power to say no, and inner freedom. These are the foundations of a life that isn't just right, but rich, meaningful, and worth living. And it all begins with one seemingly simple thing: the courage to choose yourself. Number 6. How do you begin this journey? Beginning the journey back to yourself doesn't require you to let go of everything, radically change your life, or attain some enlightened state. More often than not, this journey starts with something deeply human: a vague discomfort, a persistent unease, a nameless sadness. In today's world, where everyone is busy, performance is prioritized, and emotions are often sidelined, these inner signals are easy to ignore. But for Carl Jung, these states are not disturbances to be avoided, but meaningful messages from the depths of our unconscious. Jung viewed the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious as two foundational levels of the human psyche. The personal unconscious contains memories, emotions, and experiences we've forgotten or suppressed, often the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. The collective unconscious, even deeper, is the shared psychological layer of humanity, housing archetypes, myths, and ancient behavior patterns we inherit as part of our nature. It is often in moments of inner conflict, when our outer life no longer aligns with our inner state, that the unconscious begins to speak. Carl Jung emphasized, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." This is not poetic fluff if it's the core of his entire approach to psychoanalysis. Awakening doesn't come from seeking outside validation, but from the courage to look inward and observe what's happening beneath the surface of awareness. Jung didn't view behavior, decisions, or emotions as random. To him, every reaction was a clue pointing towards something deeper we need to understand. So, how do you begin? The answer lies in the practice of inner observation, on what Jung called active imagination. This is a technique where you consciously engage with inner images, emotions, and symbols that arise from the unconscious. When you feel lost, notice what images keep appearing in your dreams, what thoughts return when you're alone, or what emotions flare up without a clear cause. These aren't random. They're how your unconscious is trying to communicate with you. Dreams, in particular, are often the most accessible starting point. Jung called them the door to the unconscious, where the unintegrated parts of yourself appear in symbolic form. If you dream of being stuck, chased, or lost, it may be a reflection of your internal fragmentation. When you pay attention to these dreams and write them down, You're beginning to reconnect with the forgotten parts of your soul. Jung also emphasized the role of intuition, one of the 4 psychological functions in his typology, alongside thinking, feeling, and sensing. Intuition is not vague guesswork, but a deeper form of knowing that doesn't follow linear logic. It operates through symbolic perception. When something feels off, despite being rational on the surface, that feeling deserves attention. Intuition is often the unconscious's first voice, subtle, quiet, but undeniably real. Jung warned that if we don't listen to the unconscious, it will continue to shape our lives without our awareness. One of his most well-known quotes is, "Till you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is not just a warning, it's an invitation to wake up. If you don't consciously look within, the parts of yourself you haven't understood will end up guiding your behavior, your choices, even your relationships. Always available may feel you've changed too much. They might say you're selfish, cold, or distant, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're no longer doing what made them comfortable. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that truth doesn't just apply to you, it applies to those around you. When you begin to live truthfully, you unintentionally become a mirror, reflecting to others how they've avoided doing the same, and that discomfort can trigger resistance. You will also feel lonely, not because no one is physically there, but because you are stepping away from your former self, the version that was accepted by society, loved by friends, and approved by family. But it was also the version that left you exhausted, disconnected, and unable to recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. When you dare to shed that version, you enter a temporary void where the old no longer fits and the new has yet to fully take form. That space is the necessary solitude in which you begin to be reborn. During this time, doubt will arise. You'll ask yourself, am I being too stubborn? Am I hurting others? Is living authentically just too much to ask for in this world? All these questions are normal, because you're leaving the psychological comfort zone where beliefs, behaviors, and relationships were all shaped by others and walking into a journey without a pre-written map. Carl Jung referred to this phase as an inner war, the friction between two parts of yourself, the conscious self that longs for change and the unconscious that wants everything to stay the same. He wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Spiritual awakening for Jung never begins in comfort. It begins with the necessary breaking of old patterns. That's why he emphasized, there is no transformation of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion. No transformation is possible without emotion, and often the first emotions are discomfort, sadness, anger, and fear. When you begin to say no, when you stay silent instead of explaining, when you stop supporting things you no longer believe, you'll see who stays because they value your truth, and who only stayed when you played a role. It hurts, but it's necessary. Jung believed that individuation, in the process of becoming truly oneself, is not just personal development, but a revolutionary act of courage. Because you are peeling away the layers society placed on you, to step into your whole, original, and often neglected self. Transformation doesn't happen inside comfort zones. Jung stressed this not as a motivational slogan, but as a deep psychological truth. The ego protects itself by clinging to the familiar, even if that familiarity causes pain. So, to change, you must break through your natural resistance. You must face the voice in your head that says, just endure a little longer. What if no one accepts the real me? What if I lose everything by being honest? And yes, you may lose some things, but what you gain is far more important. You will stop trading your inner peace for the sake of preserving things built on pretense. And once you've tasted the freedom of being fully yourself, even if only for a fleeting moment, you won't want to return to the old way of living. Remember, there's nothing wrong with feeling lonely. There's nothing wrong with doubting. There's nothing wrong with being tired. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of movement. You are standing at the edge between who you used to be and who you are becoming. And this journey, however slow or difficult, is the truest path forward. Not everyone will walk with you. Not everyone will understand. But the very act of choosing to stand alone, if that's what it takes, is the loudest declaration you can make. I matter enough to live truthfully. And it is in this moment that life begins to shift from the inside out. Number 8. The ripple effect. How your truth transforms the world around you. Most of us begin the journey back to ourselves as a personal pursuit, a way to finally live for ourselves. But what often takes us by surprise is this. When you dare to live truthfully, the world around you begins to shift not with loud, dramatic change, but through subtle, powerful, and lasting transformation. The first and most visible change appears in your relationships. When you begin to live honestly, you start attracting people who are aligned with your frequency. This doesn't mean they're just like you, but that they resonate with the energy of authenticity. And that energy becomes the foundation for a real connection. Relationships once held together by performance or pressure start to dissolve, not because you're abandoning anyone, but because you're no longer pretending to hold them close. The silence between people who are no longer real with each other becomes undeniable. But alongside that, new relationships will emerge, fewer, but deeper and more nourishing. In these spaces, you no longer have to adjust yourself to be loved. In family dynamics, the shift becomes even more evident. When you stop acting like the perfect child, the enduring wife, or the man who must never be weak, you begin to break generational cycle patterns that those before you were also trapped in. You begin to say no to imposed expectations. You begin to share your real emotions. And in doing so, you redefine what love looks like, not as a silent sacrifice, but as mutual presence. It's no longer about enduring one another, but about showing up fully. Jung didn't believe in changing the world through surface-level protest. He believed in transformation from within each individual because the individual is the cell of the collective. He wrote, "The individual is the only reality. The further we go in understanding the individual, the more we will understand the world. The world doesn't change from the outside in. It changes from the inside out, starting with you, with me, with each small, truthful choice made daily." Imagine this. If you set clear boundaries, someone else might feel empowered to do the same. If you admit you're scared, someone beside you might finally feel relief knowing they're not alone. If you express what you truly need, someone else might be inspired to ask themselves that very question. You don't have to speak for everyone. You don't have to be a leader. You just have to be a single flame. And the light will spread from your quiet, honest presence. And so, a person who lives truthfully doesn't just transform themselves. They shift the entire space around them. They open doors to honest conversations. They activate healing in others. Over time, they help create small communities where sincerity replaces performance, where people truly see one another and stay. That is how, by choosing yourself, you begin to ripple into circles far larger than yourself. Before you end this, ask yourself one simple question with complete honesty. What am I still holding on to that no longer serves me? It might be a relationship you're maintaining out of fear of change, a job you're staying in just because it feels safe, a lifestyle, a label, an outdated expectation you believe you're supposed to keep. But look directly at it. Does it still nourish you? Or are you just preserving a version of yourself that no longer feels like you? Carl Jung once said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. You don't have to reject the past. You don't have to disown the parts of your life that helped you survive. But the time has come to be brutally honest with yourself. What are you continuing to sustain, and does it still feel true for you today? Choosing yourself means choosing to live truthfully. It's not an empty slogan. It's a daily act, concrete, subtle, and deeply personal. It's when you listen to your real emotions instead of forcing yourself to feel fine. It's when you say no, even though you know it might disappoint someone. It's when you dare to pause, to walk away, to begin again, even when no one cheers you on, even when there are no guarantees of what lies ahead. Because what matters most isn't the outcome. What matters is that you choose your truest self to be your compass. And that choice, step by step, begins to change everything. You don't need to do it all in one day. You don't need to become someone who is fully awakened. This journey isn't measured by speed. It's measured by honesty, by persistence, by your willingness to return to yourself no matter how many times you've strayed. Maybe you're afraid. Maybe you feel it's too late. Maybe you're wondering, am I strong enough to keep going? And if that's where you are right now, know this: you are not alone. There are so many others, some sitting right beside you, some far across the world, quietly walking this path too. They're also learning to listen, learning to let go, learning to accept that being imperfect doesn't make them unworthy of living truthfully. Every time you choose yourself, you change the world not with noise, but with resonance, not with power, but with presence, not with grand gestures, but with a life truly lived without hiding, without pretending, without betraying your soul. And if you've been waiting for a sign to begin, to keep going, or to come home, this is it. If this message speaks to you, leave a comment. I'm ready to choose myself. You're not just writing it for yourself. You're adding strength to others who are on the same path. And if you know someone who might need this reminder of their worth, share this video with them. Because of you, someone may finally find their way back to themselves. Have you ever asked yourself, why do you do everything? Try your best to be perfect in everyone's eyes. Yet when night falls, you still feel an unnamed emptiness inside. You may have a stable job, a relationship that seems solid, steady compliments. But somewhere, a small voice keeps echoing, asking, and what about me? What do I truly want? We are taught from childhood that putting others first is noble, that sacrifice is the quality that makes a woman valuable. But what is the price of that? Dreams set aside, emotions swallowed, a life slowly drifting away from one's true self. And then, at some point, you realize, if you keep living like this, you will disappear within your very own life. Today's video will share with you what truly happens when a woman is brave enough to put herself first. It is not selfishness, but a journey back to yourself, where the shadow is seen, fear is released, and peace begins to sprout. Stay until the end, because you may discover that the change you have longed for was never out there in the world, but has always been hidden in your own heart. Number 1. The shadow and the loops of hurt. There are moments in life when a woman realizes she has gone very far, has played all the roles, has tried not to disappoint anyone. Yet when the door closes and she is alone in the dark, her heart breaks into pieces. Even after giving her all, the outcome is still loneliness. Loves come and go. Different paths all lead her back to one point. A familiar fatigue, a nameless emptiness. And that is exactly the sign of what Carl Jung calls the shadow. The darkness within a woman is not unfamiliar. It is the parts she learned to hide in order to be accepted. As a child, she was scolded for being weak because she cried easily, so she learned to swallow her tears. When she voiced opinions, she was told she was stubborn, so she learned to be silent. When she dreamed creatively, she heard it was useless, so she learned to suppress. Those rejected fragments pile up, forming an unconscious shadow. She thinks she has forgotten, but in truth the shadow only retreats to a deeper layer, waiting for a chance to return. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For women, that fate often appears through loops of hurt. A loop in love where she chooses again and again the men who abandon her. A loop at work where she sabotages opportunities because she doesn't believe she deserves them. A loop in daily life where she tries to please everyone and then collapses in exhaustion. This is not a cruel destiny, but the darkness in the unconscious, repeating a script until they are brave enough to face it. A woman in her 30s wrote to the channel to share her story. Outwardly, she always wore a smile, and friends praised her for seeming optimistic and happy. But when night fell, she broke down in tears. She had just ended her third relationship with the same script, sweet at first, then gradually distant and gone. The bitter thing was that she knew from the beginning that something wasn't right, but an invisible voice kept whispering, "If I sacrifice enough, if I endure enough, I will be loved." Only when she looked back at her childhood did she see that this false belief came from the fact that love then only arrived when she Why do I keep returning to the same point of pain? And when the answer echoes, she realizes it is not fate, but precisely those suppressed parts repeating themselves to be healed. Change begins when she dares to admit, "I have been hurt." A single admission is enough to make the darkness dissipate. When a woman says, "I don't want to continue this loop anymore," That is when the wheel of fate turns in a different direction. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Those who only look outside dream. Those who dare to look inside awaken." And when a woman puts herself first, she has chosen the path of awakening. If you find yourself walking in a familiar circle, suffering again and again, understand that it is not injustice. It is the shadow within you waiting to be seen. And when you are brave enough to put yourself first, you will realize the loop can end right here. So, if you are ready today, leave a declaration for yourself in the comments. I am ready to look into the shadow. That will be the first lamp you light in the abandoned attic, so that from here, the real healing journey begins. Number 2. The turning point of healing. And precisely at the moment a woman is brave enough to look straight at her shadow, a new door begins to open. The door leading to the true turning point of healing. Healing does not come from changing your job, starting a new love, or expanding your social circle. Those things may bring momentary excitement, but then the emptiness returns because the root has never been touched. True healing begins when you stop seeking outside and return inside, daring to sit down with yourself. Jung calls this individuation, the journey of becoming an individual, where you slowly separate from the pressure of external expectations to become yourself, whole and unmixed. Individuation is not far away. It starts with small actions, daring to say no to what your heart doesn't want, daring to admit you need rest instead of pushing further, daring to express your true opinion even if someone won't like it. Those small things, when repeated, are the bricks that pave the road back to yourself. A woman once shared that she had lived for many years in emotional numbness. Outwardly, she was successful, busy, with a stable family, but every night she tossed and turned, feeling suffocated. She tried many things, traveling, shopping, seeking new relationships, but nothing filled her. Only when she joined a short meditation course did she dare to sit still and realize that the real pain was not outside, but in the fact that she had never been herself. She had acted a role for too long, the perfect wife, the model mother, the excellent employee, until even she no longer knew who she was. That realization was a shock, but also a turning point. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." This is the spirit of individuation. It's not about erasing the past, but about daring to turn the fragments into a foundation for growth. The turning point of healing comes when a woman stops asking, "Why did they treat me like that?" and starts asking, "Why did I allow that to repeat?" Change does not lie in controlling others, but in looking straight at the unconscious limits that have bound her. This journey is not easy. It requires the courage to stand firm in loneliness. Because when you begin to choose yourself, there will be people who no longer feel comfortable around you. They are used to a version that always yields, always sacrifices. When you set boundaries, they will react, even leave. That moment may be painful, but it is also a test. Loss is not a sign you're wrong, it is a natural sorting. Only healthy relationships can exist beside a woman who has chosen herself. In the early days, healing can resemble a collapse. Familiar shells fall away, old beliefs are challenged, relationships once close drift apart. But in that empty space, you begin to hear your own voice clearly. You remember the dreams you once abandoned, the desires you once extinguished, and you realize that putting yourself first is not turning your back on the world, but stepping out to meet it with an authentic self. Look back. How many times have you forced a smile just to avoid trouble? How many times have you agreed to something you didn't want because you feared displeasing someone? How many times have you been exhausted yet pushed on because someone needed you? Each time like that, you moved a little further away from yourself. The turning point of healing begins with noticing this and deciding to stop. The individuation process is like tending an abandoned garden. At first, it's all weeds, thorns, and cracked dry soil. The more you look, the more discouraged you feel, even wanting to walk away. But as you patiently pull weeds, till the earth, and water it drop by drop, gradually green shoots begin to sprout. What you find is not a perfect world at once, but life quietly waiting to be cared for. The soul is the same. Beneath the dust of memories and pain, there remains sensitivity, strength, and compassion, waiting for you to be brave and persistent enough to return and nurture them. First, not only opens healing, it simultaneously initiates a series of losses. This is the first cost, and no one can avoid it. When you start choosing yourself, you no longer agree to the things that used to drain you. You no longer maintain a relationship just to avoid loneliness. You no longer strain in roles your heart does not truly want. And at that very moment, familiar things slip away. A friend stops calling, a relationship dissolves, a work environment becomes so stifling you can no longer stay. That loss hurts because we cling to the familiar like a life raft. But the truth is, what leaves never truly belong to us. However, this breaking does not make you weaker. On the contrary, it frees the energy that was once consumed, so you can use it for yourself. A friend of mine, after many years in a marriage full of silence and disrespect, decided she could not continue. She put herself first, for the first time in her life, and said goodbye. The cost came immediately. Friends called her selfish. Family said she lacked patience. and her children looked at her in confusion. In the first months, loneliness was like a storm swallowing her whole. But then, in that seemingly meaningless void, she gradually realized the silence was no longer a prison, but new ground on which to replant her life. And from that very place, she began to write, to study again, to find a true self that had never been lived. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." The process of entering consciousness has never been gentle. It's like breaking an old habit. The body trembles, the mind resists, the heart tightens. Choosing yourself is the same. At first, it feels like a betrayal of the familiar, a betrayal of your old version. But that very betrayal opens a true path. In literature, the figure of Antigone by Sophocles is evidence of the price paid when one dares to live true to inner conviction. Antigone did not choose conformity to please King Creon. She dared to do what opposed the law to keep faith with morality and her true nature. The price she paid was death, but through it she became an immortal symbol of loyalty to oneself. Of course, a woman's journey today will not lead to tragedy in the literal sense like Antigone, but the spirit is identical. Choosing yourself always comes with a price, loss, loneliness, judgment. But it also opens an unprecedented strength. This is the stage Jung calls the dark night of the soul. It is the transformational period that anyone who steps onto the healing path must pass through. That dark night is full of trials because it strips away all that is false so you can face the bare truth. It's like walking through a forest at night. You see no exit, only the whistling wind and your own trembling. But if you patiently keep walking, dawn will eventually appear. When you dare to enter the darkest cave of your life, where there is loss, pain, and loneliness, that very place opens the door to finding your true self. In that darkness, many women feel they have lost everything. They lose people who were once close, a relationship they thought would be lasting, a familiar position at work. Such loss can drive you to despair. But remember, it is not destruction, it is sifting. What no longer fits will leave by itself, leaving space for the new to arrive. And that space, though painful, is the foundation of freedom. An uncomfortable truth is this: when you put yourself first, you will lose those who only stayed because of your sacrifice. When you no longer give unconditionally, they will leave. When you no longer endure to keep a false peace, the relationship will break. But this breaking does not make you weaker. On the contrary, it frees the energy that was once consumed, so you can use it for yourself. And the most important thing is, loss is not the enemy. It is part of the process. Just as a tree must shed its leaves for new buds to grow, a woman must accept losing what no longer fits to blossom into a new self. That dark night does not kill you. It only strips away what is false, leaving you with the truth. When you prioritize yourself, you will have to pay a price, but that very price proves you are on the right path. Awakening has never come in peace. It comes in storms, in long nights that seem to have no exit. And then suddenly you realize you have gone farther than ever. If you are on this journey, or have experienced losses when daring to put yourself first, share your story in the comments. Perhaps your experience will become a lamp to guide another woman, someone also walking in darkness and needing to know she is not alone. Number 4. Facing the fear of loneliness. After the losses that must be endured in the dark night of the soul, a woman often stands before the greatest emptiness, the void of loneliness. And it is at this moment that she realizes another truth. The initial cost of choosing herself is not only loss, but also learning to stand alone without collapsing when there is no one around to cling to. In culture and society, loneliness is often labeled as failure. A woman without a partner, without someone by her side, is often looked at with pity, as if she were programmed to seek social connection as a survival mechanism. When isolated, the body reacts similarly to injury. Heart rate rises, stress hormones like cortisol surge, making us restless, anxious. This is why many women after losing a relationship feel as if they are short of oxygen. But science also shows something hopeful. When you practice the ability to be alone, through meditation, journaling, or self-nourishing activities, the brain begins forming new connections. Regions related to emotional regulation are activated, creating a sense of safety and inner peace. The ability to be with yourself is not only a psychological concept, but also a reprogramming of the brain, helping you break free from the loop of fear and dependence. This means that loneliness at the beginning of choosing yourself is not a punishment, but a natural process for the brain and soul to adapt to a new state. When you patiently walk through that stage, body and spirit gradually learn how to create safety without needing others' presence or validation. The beauty of loneliness lies in this. It makes you more honest. When no one is there to witness, to see you act strong, kind, or perfect, you are forced to face yourself. You may cry, be weak, be angry, and that honesty lays the foundation for a new life. Many women have shared that their most solitary moments were when they wrote their most sincere journal entries, painted their most emotional pictures, or simply felt the deepest connection with nature, with their own breath. In the early days, loneliness feels like a covering night, suffocating you, making you desperate for escape. You may feel abandoned, forgotten, even doubt your choice. But when you sit with it, silence gradually becomes a companion. And one day, you realize you no longer feel empty, but a new fullness from within. Choosing yourself does not mean abandoning the world or denying love. It only changes how you step into relationships. You no longer come to others to fill loneliness, but to share from fullness. You no longer seek a love to save you, but to grow together. When you have gone through and stood firm in loneliness, you step into life with a different energy, an energy others cannot ignore. So, if you are in that stage, long nights of loneliness, days with no one to share, believe that it is not an end, but a door opening for you to learn how to return to, stay with, and cherish yourself. And once you cross it, you will see. Loneliness has never been a failure. It is an invitation to grow, to become a woman who not only knows how to love others, but also knows how to love herself completely. Number 5, the liberating truth. And then, after learning how to stand firm in loneliness, a woman discovers an even deeper challenge, not only facing the outer void, but looking straight at the moments in life when she turned away from herself. If loneliness forces us to stay with ourselves, truth forces us to confront the cracks, where we said yes when our hearts wanted no, where we nodded just to avoid displeasing others, even while every cell screamed against it. And it is at this step that liberation begins. You can imagine the process as looking at yourself in an old mirror. At first, it is so dusty and warped, you only see messy, unclear images. But when you dare to wipe away the dust layer by layer, the true reflection emerges, sometimes beautiful, sometimes wrinkled, sometimes showing scars. But at least, that is your real face. Truth is like that. It is not always pleasant, but only when we dare to face it can we stop being haunted by illusions. In a Jungian therapy session, a woman once shared that her husband controlled almost all her decisions, from hobbies, clothing, to forbidding her to meet friends. Many times, she wanted to protest, to say no, but her mouth smiled and nodded. She feared conflict, feared abandonment, feared family breakdown. And so, day after day, she betrayed herself. Until one day, looking in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize the woman before her. Tired eyes, a forced smile, an empty heart. She said that moment felt like a blow. She no longer cried for her husband's control, but cried for herself, for staying silent too long. From then on, she decided to start again, this time with one principle: never betray herself again. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to get there, first we must see how many times we have left ourselves. Truth can be painful because it reveals weaknesses, the times we deny ourselves to be accepted, to keep a false peace. But that very truth is the turning point to reclaiming ownership of life. When you begin to say no to what your heart doesn't want, a strange lightness arises. At first, it may come with guilt. You will ask yourself, am I too selfish? Am I hurting someone? But gradually you realize that being true to yourself is not taking away from someone else, but restoring fairness to both. Because if you say yes, while your heart means no, then both you and the other person are living a lie. From a psychological view, constantly denying your feelings and true needs creates your life instead of being ruled by fear and false roles. If you look around, friends, colleagues, family, how many out of 50 do you think truly dare to live without betraying themselves? Daring to say no when needed, daring to stand up when disrespected. Leave your guess in the comments. The number you write will reveal not only the world you live in, but also something about yourself. Number 6. Long-term fruits, freedom and peace. Once a woman dares to face the truth, she sees an important shift. The pain that once crushed her no longer controls her as before. When truth is faced and accepted, what once bound her loses its power. She begins entering a new state, where freedom and peace are no longer distant, but the firm foundation of her life. This is the greatest fruit of choosing yourself. No longer living in fear of abandonment, no longer haunted by loss, no longer letting others define your worth. Instead, she lives with clarity, self-authority, and the belief that she is whole enough to face anything. You can picture the process like an old instrument. At first, it sounds harsh because its strings are loose, covered in dust. But when the musician patiently tunes, cleans, and touches each key, the music gradually becomes clear, full. Not because the instrument changed its nature, but because it was returned to its true state. A woman is the same. When she dares to face shadow, loneliness, truth, she has returned her soul. The result is a new melody, the melody of freedom, peace, and love, no longer rooted in fear. I once knew the story of a painter who spent her youth painting pictures to please buyers. Her work was beautiful, technically skilled, but it never truly satisfied her. She always felt rejected inside, as she always chased others' expectations. At one point, exhausted, she decided to paint the way her heart wanted, even if no one cared. At first, the response was poor. Those paintings were harder to sell. Many said they were hard to understand. But she persevered. Gradually, her honesty touched those who resonated. She found a new community, people who didn't just buy art, but valued the soul within. Most importantly, for the first time she felt truly free, not painting to survive, but painting to live her passion. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But once that terrifying thing happens, when you accept both light and shadow, both strength and weakness, you simultaneously step into freedom. You no longer fear rejection, because you no longer reject yourself. You no longer fear loss, because you understand what leaves simply no longer fit." When a woman reaches this stage, her relationships change naturally. Love is no longer a battlefield where each struggles for control or fears abandonment. It becomes a place of nourishment where both can be themselves. A partner is no longer the condition for my happiness, but a companion to grow with. The change does not come because others suddenly become perfect, but because she has changed perspective, stepped out of the loop of lack and fear. The outside world also mirrors this transformation. A woman who once lived in anxiety may have seen pressure everywhere, but when her inner self is peaceful, even a rainy day becomes a chance to breathe and enjoy a cup of tea. Once the soul is no longer chaotic, the outer world is no longer a threat, but a space to create and experience. The most precious thing about this fruit is its durability. Joy from achievement, excitement from a new love, or safety from someone's protection, all can disappear. But peace from within cannot be taken. It is like a fire lit deep in the soul, not a roaring blaze, but enough to warm throughout the long journey. Look at women who have gone through this journey. You'll see a very different presence. Without loudly asserting, without pleasing, they enter a room and naturally carry an energy that draws attention. That magnetism does not come from clothes, looks, or success, but from an inner state. They have reconciled with themselves, and so the world around them reconciles with them. When a woman dares to put herself first, she goes through shadow, loss, and painful truths, to then touch a freedom unshakable. Freedom from fear, from the need to prove, from the weight of others' expectations. And in that freedom, peace emerges, not because life is easier, but because she is strong enough to stand steady through any storm. A woman brave enough to put herself first is like an architect patiently rebuilding her life's house among ruins. She does not rush to build quickly for admiration, nor hide the scars etched deep. Every experience, shadow, loss, painful truths, becomes a new brick, making the foundation stronger and the house wholly hers. And if you have ever asked, what really changes when a woman puts herself first? The answer is not that she abandons the world, but how she shows up in it. Clear, free, fearless. She no longer seeks approval because the peace and freedom within are enough to make her a pillar and inspiration for those who cross her path. If this video stirs your desire to begin that journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you